The heavy oak doors of Anderson Manufacturing slammed behind me as I stumbled into the parking lot, clutching a manila envelope containing the paperwork I'd just been forced to sign. My hands were shaking and I could still hear my father's words ringing in my ears. "You're too stupid to run a business, Olivia. Sign the papers and get out." 20 minutes earlier, I had walked into my father's office for what I thought was a routine meeting about the company's future. Instead, I found myself ambushed by my father, my older brother James, and our family lawyer. The papers were already drawn up. A complete transfer of my 30% shareholding in the family business, shares my grandfather had specifically left to me in his will. The amount they were offering was insultingly low, less than half of what the shares were actually worth. "You can't do this," I had protested, looking between my father's stern face and James's smug expression. "Grandpa wanted me to have these shares." "Your grandfather didn't realize how incompetent you'd turn out to be," James sneered, adjusting his expensive tie. "All those crazy ideas about modernization and sustainable manufacturing, you'd run this company into the ground." Dad leaned forward across his massive desk, his face red with anger. "Either you sign these papers voluntarily, or we'll call an emergency board meeting and have you removed for incompetence. Your choice, Olivia." I knew they could do it too. Between them, they controlled enough votes to push through almost anything. For the past year, they'd been systematically undermining every suggestion I made, blocking my initiatives and excluding me from key meetings. "This is because I wouldn't drop the new automation project, isn't it?" I asked, already knowing the answer. The automation project had been my baby, a complete modernization of our manufacturing process that would have made us more efficient and competitive. But it would also have meant letting go of some of Dad's old golf buddies who held cushy management positions. That project would have cost us millions. Dad shouted, though we both knew the projected returns would have more than justified the investment. "Sign the papers, Olive," James said, using the childhood nickname I hated. "You're not cut out for this. Go start a boutique or something. Isn't that what girls like you do?" I looked down at the papers again, tears threatening to spill. This company had been my life since I was old enough to walk. Grandpa used to carry me through the factory floor on his shoulders, teaching me about every machine, every process. He saw something in me that my father and brother never did. But now, sitting in that office, I realized something. They would never see me as anything but the little girl who needed to be managed and controlled. Even with my MBA from Stanford and 5 years of experience in tech companies, I was still just little Olive to them. So I signed. I signed away my birthright, my inheritance, and walked out of Anderson Manufacturing for what I thought was the last time. Now, sitting in my car in the parking lot, I pulled out my phone and made a call I'd been putting off for months. "Marcus? It's Olivia Anderson. Remember that offer you made me about starting our own company? I'm in." Marcus Chin had been my mentor at Stanford and had recently sold his tech company for a fortune. He'd been trying to convince me to join him in a new venture, but I'd been too loyal to my family to consider it. "What changed your mind?" he asked. I looked back at the building where 3 generations of Andersons had built their legacy. "Let's just say I'm finally free to pursue my own path." "Perfect timing," Marcus said. "I just got a very interesting call from Stanley Tech. They're looking for someone to revolutionize their manufacturing process. Someone with both tech knowledge and traditional manufacturing experience." I felt a smile spread across my face for the first time that day. Stanley Tech was one of our biggest competitors. "Send me the details," I said. "I think I know exactly what they need." As I drove away from Anderson Manufacturing, I glanced in my rearview mirror. James was standing at the window of Dad's office, probably congratulating himself on finally getting rid of his troublesome sister. Little did they know they hadn't just kicked me out of the family business, they had freed me to become their worst nightmare. I had something they never expected. A plan. The next morning, I walked into Marcus's downtown office at 7 a.m. sharp, carrying a thick folder of proposals I'd been working on secretly for months. The office was empty except for Marcus, who was already on his 3rd coffee of the day. "Show me what you've got," he said, clearing space on his conference table. I spread out my documents, detailed plans for a revolutionary approach to manufacturing that combined advanced robotics with AI-driven process optimization. It was everything I had wanted to do at Anderson Manufacturing, but better. "This isn't just about automation," I explained, pointing to my projections. "It's about creating a completely new kind of manufacturing company. One that's efficient, sustainable, and future-proof. Marcus studied the papers, occasionally nodding. You've been planning this for a while, haven't you? Ever since I realized my family would never let me implement these changes in their company, I admitted. I just didn't have the courage to leave until they forced me out. He looked up at me, a glint in his eye. Sometimes getting pushed off the cliff is exactly what we need to learn we can fly. 3 years seemed to pass in the blink of an eye. Nova Manufacturing, the company Marcus and I built from scratch, had grown from an ambitious startup to an industry powerhouse. Our revolutionary AI-driven manufacturing processes had attracted attention from major tech companies worldwide. I sat in my corner office 40 stories above downtown, reviewing our latest acquisition proposal when my assistant knocked on the door. Ms. Anderson? You might want to see this. She handed me her tablet, open to a breaking news article. The headline made my coffee go cold. Anderson Manufacturing files for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. I scrolled through the article, my heart pounding. Words jumped out at me: failure to modernize, lost major contracts, unable to compete with innovative rivals. Everything I had warned them about 3 years ago had come true. My phone buzzed, a text from James. Are you happy now? You destroyed us. I deleted it without responding. I hadn't destroyed anything. They had done this to themselves, clinging to outdated methods and refusing to change with the times. Clara, I called to my assistant, get me the latest financial reports on Anderson Manufacturing. And schedule a meeting with our board for tomorrow morning. Already done, she replied efficiently. Also, your father and brother are in the lobby. They don't have an appointment, but they're demanding to see you. I felt a bitter laugh bubble up. Of course they were. How long have they been waiting? About an hour. Make it 2. Then send them up. I spent the next 2 hours reviewing Anderson Manufacturing's financial statements. The situation was even worse than the news suggested. They had lost 70% of their market share in the past year alone, most of it to Nova. Their stock had plummeted from $86 to just $3 per share. Finally, I buzzed Clara. Send them in. The men who walked into my office were barely recognizable as the confident tyrants who had forced me out 3 years ago. Dad's hair had gone completely gray and James's expensive suit looked worn at the edges. Nice office, James muttered, looking around at the modern decor and floor-to-ceiling windows. I guess selling us out to the competition paid well. I leaned back in my chair. I never sold anything to the competition, James. I became the competition. Dad stepped forward. Olivia, we need to talk about Dash. About what? I cut him off. About how you forced me to sell my shares for pennies on the dollar. About how you called me too stupid to run a business. Or about how you're now bankrupt because you refused to listen to the very changes I proposed 3 years ago. He seemed to deflate, sinking into one of my visitor chairs. We made mistakes. We see that now. No, I corrected him, you're only admitting mistakes because you've run out of options. What do you want? James cleared his throat. We need a job. Both of us. We've lost everything, Olive. The bank is foreclosing on Dad's house, my wife left me. We have nowhere else to go. I stared at them, remembering all the times they had belittled me, dismissed my ideas, treated me like I was worthless. Now here they were, begging for scraps from the very person they had thrown away. Let me get this straight, I said slowly. You want me to hire you? The same men who said I was too stupid to run a business. We were wrong, Dad whispered, and I saw tears in his eyes. You've built something amazing here. Something we should have let you build with us. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city skyline. 3 buildings over, I could see the Anderson Manufacturing logo, now faded and worn. Below it, a for lease sign had just gone up. You know what the funny thing is? I turned back to them. I actually have 2 executive positions opening up. Our VP of Operations is retiring, and we need a new head of traditional manufacturing integration. Hope flickered in their eyes. But, I continued, those positions require someone who can take direction from their superiors. Someone who can admit when they're wrong and adapt to new ideas. Someone who respects the chain of command. I paused. Tell me, do you think you can handle taking orders from your stupid little Olive? The silence in the room was deafening. James looked like he was chewing on glass while Dad stared at his shoes. Yes, Dad finally said. We can. I picked up 2 thick folders from my desk and handed them over. These are entry-level management positions. The pay is about a quarter of what you're used to, and you'll be reporting to people half your age. You'll need to complete our full training program, including courses on modern manufacturing processes and workplace diversity. They both nodded, clutching the folders like lifelines. One more thing, I added, my voice hard. If I hear even a whisper of disrespect, if you try to undermine me or go behind my back even once, you're out. No severance, no references, no third chances. Are we clear? Crystal clear, James mumbled. As they turned to leave, I called out, Dad? He looked back, eyes red. Grandpa would be proud. Not of you, but of what his shares helped build. The door closed behind them and I sank back into my chair, emotionally drained. My phone buzzed, a message from Marcus. Heard your family paid you a visit. You okay? I looked around my office at the awards lining the walls, the contracts waiting for my signature, the empire I had built from nothing but determination and the very ideas my family had mocked. Better than okay, I replied. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. 6 months into their new positions at Nova Manufacturing, my father and brother were barely recognizable. Gone were the expensive suits and arrogant swagger, replaced by business casual attire and hesitant demeanors. They had to earn their way up just like everyone else. I watched through my office window as James gave a presentation to the innovation team. The same brother who once mocked my crazy ideas was now enthusiastically explaining our AI-driven quality control system to new employees. The irony wasn't lost on me. Ms. Anderson? Claire interrupted my thoughts. The Stanley Tech CEO is here for the contract signing. I smiled, straightening my blazer. Stanley Tech, our biggest coup yet. They were about to sign an exclusive manufacturing partnership worth $300 million. The same contract that Anderson Manufacturing had lost months before their bankruptcy. As I walked into the conference room, I caught sight of my father in the hallway, carrying a stack of reports. His new position in quality assurance meant actual work, not just golf meetings with old buddies. He nodded respectfully as I passed, and I noticed more gray in his hair. Olivia. Michael Stanley greeted me warmly. Ready to make history? Always, I replied, taking my seat at the head of the table. Just as we were about to begin, James burst into the room looking flustered. I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's something you need to see immediately. I was about to remind him about our protocols for interruptions when I saw the urgency in his eyes. Excuse me for just a moment, I said to Michael. In the hallway, James handed me his tablet. Someone's been tampering with our new production line codes. If we hadn't caught it, it could have caused a major malfunction. I scanned the data, my blood running cold. This wasn't just tampering, this was sabotage. And the access codes used belonged to a very familiar name. Get that up here. Now. 5 minutes later, my father stood before my desk, pale and shaking. Olivia, I can explain. Explain what? I cut him off. How you tried to sabotage the company that gave you a second chance. How you were willing to risk hundreds of jobs just to, prove a point. I just wanted to show them we still had value, he whispered. The old ways. The old ways are dead, I snapped. And now so is your career here. I pressed the intercom. Security, please escort Mr. Anderson out. His employment is terminated, effective immediately. As security led him away, I saw James standing in the doorway, looking devastated. Did you know about this? I asked. No, he replied, and for once I believed him. I'm the one who caught it. He paused. He's still living with me, you know. After losing the house. That's not my problem anymore, I said firmly. He made his choice. But later that night, sitting alone in my office, I felt the weight of the day heavy on my shoulders. A movement caught my eye. James, still at his desk despite the late hour, head in his hands. I walked to his workspace. You did the right thing, I said quietly. He looked up, eyes red. I know. It's just, he's broken Olive. Losing the company, the house, and now this, he's lost everything. No, I corrected him. He threw everything away. There's a difference. The next morning, I called an all-hands meeting. Standing on the stage where we usually announced new innovations, I faced my employees, hundreds of people whose livelihoods depended on Nova's success. Yesterday we discovered an attempt to sabotage our production systems, I announced. The person responsible has been removed and our security has been upgraded. But I want to talk about why this happened. I took a deep breath. Some of you know that the person responsible was my father, the former CEO of Anderson Manufacturing. He couldn't accept that the future belongs to those who embrace change, not those who fear it. In the audience, I saw James sitting straight, professional, despite the personal pain I knew he felt. Nova Manufacturing isn't just a company, I continued. We're a vision of what manufacturing can be. Modern, efficient, sustainable. We don't succeed by clinging to the past or by sabotaging others. We succeed by being better, smarter, and more innovative. After the meeting, I found an envelope on my desk. Inside was my father's old Anderson Manufacturing ID card and a handwritten note. You were never the stupid one. I was. Dad. 1 year later, Nova Manufacturing had doubled in size. We'd revolutionized the industry, created thousands of jobs, and set new standards for manufacturing excellence. James had earned a promotion legitimately this time, and was leading our innovation department. I heard through family friends that my father had moved to Florida, living in a small apartment and working part-time at a hardware store. He'd finally found humility, but at a devastating cost. Standing in my office looking at the old Anderson Manufacturing building, now bearing the Nova logo, I thought about legacy. Not the kind you inherit, but the kind you build. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Ready to announce the IPO? I smiled, thinking of how far we'd come. Ready, I replied. Tomorrow Nova Manufacturing would go public, valued at $2.8 billion. The same business papers that covered Anderson Manufacturing's collapse would now document Nova's triumph. But success wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about vision, innovation, and the courage to build something new from the ashes of the old. I picked up my father's old ID card tucked away in my desk drawer and finally did what I should have done months ago. I dropped it in the shredder. Some legacies need to end for new ones to begin.